Hey there everyone, and welcome to the second video going through all the monsters that came out in 2022. In this video we're going to go over the fire monsters and the cycles that came out this year. This is going through the monster cycles first, covering them like I did last year. It just makes more sense for some of them. What I mean by cycles are monsters where they come out as one in each element and they're meant to work together. So the ones for this year were the Elfin Dragons and the Gummy Dragons. Previously we had like the Crystal Worms, garden fairies, dolphins, that kind of stuff. So looking at them individually doesn't make much sense because they don't actually do much by themselves. They're meant to be used together. Now, that's not quite true for the dolphins and garden fairies, so I did talk about them individually as well. This year, though, it was just super epics, which they're only meant to be used together. So we're talking through the monster cycles, then we're going to go through the fire element itself, talking about that with the themes and stuff, then the new monsters, and finally the highlights and the power level of the new monsters that came out this year in fire. So this was, like I said in the last video, I would class 2022 as the year of union. Going to talk more about that in the water video when we round up this series for this year. So the first cycle to talk about is the Elfin Dragons. Now the Elfin Dragons, I'm going to come out and say it straight off the bat, they are not particularly good. They're just very awkward and clunky, and we'll go into that as we talk through this slide here. You'll kind of see where I'm coming from and where they, like from a design perspective, are quite difficult, quite difficult to use. So looking in the top left here first, the moves. So the moveset on them, across them, they have a very similar moveset, but the moves themselves are slightly different, but the concept is the same idea. They all have some kind of entrance which sets up a particular archetype move. So we're talking about sleep or poison or throw. Their entrance will set up that move, and then they have an Elfin Dragon sweeping move for that particular thing, which is then, the second point here, and it's basically a 70-second piercing move. The condition of the Elfin Dragon thing is that it needs to have, they need to have an Elfin Dragon next in line. So basically, if we look at, say, I don't know, the Earth one, it comes in, it makes a rock at the back of the team, and then it has Elfin Dragon Catapult, which, if there's an Elfin Dragon next in line, it can then sacrifice the rock that it made at the back of the team to pierce and kill something in 70 seconds. So that's the general idea here, and they all set themselves up, and they all have different archetypes. So I'm going to come back to that. They also all have a pullback Elfin Dragon move. So this is a 50-second move where you can pull back any one of the Elfin Dragons, and so they can all just be pulling each other in and out of the battle, keep setting up those moves, all that kind of stuff. Like, that's what they do a lot, is they're just jumping in and out of the battle, setting up moves. Now, 4 of the 6 have a killer move as well. I can't remember exactly, it depends slightly on them. I think the Holy One, for example, actually the Holy One does have Protector Killer, but obviously 2 of the moves are the Elfin Dragon sweeping move, and then there's the Elfin Dragon pullback move, and then they've got 2 other slots, which varies a little bit between them, but mostly they have like killer moves, and those are non-piercing. They're just like the standard killer moves, which is a big deal because they all have high defense, i.e. they have low attack. So their killer moves are basically rubbish. They just don't really do anything. Having a high defense, though, is obviously a good thing. They vary slightly about exactly how much defense they have, but basically they've all got high defense. So yeah, they're pretty tanky, but they're mostly around this Elfin Dragon sweeping move, and it's like, can you set that up and then kill enemies with it and keep setting it up and stuff. But because they only set up themselves, what they have to do is, like, they do their move, they then have to get pulled back, re-enter, and then get a turn again, then they can do their move. So even though it's 70 seconds and it's piercing, it's actually quite a bit slower than that, because it's 70 seconds, well, actually, I mean, to be honest, the 70 seconds doesn't really matter. It's basically, they need to get a turn, and then you need to get another turn with a different Elfin Dragon to, well, any Elfin Dragon to pull them back. Then they need to re-enter, wait until they get a turn, and then they can do it again. So there's a lot of wasted time with, like, exactly how things line up. So the actual 70 seconds doesn't matter a huge amount. It's more about, can you line things up and chain things together. So yeah, that's kind of like the moveset and roughly how it works. So that nicely transitions into the gameplay, which I basically kind of talked about a bit already. You repeatedly pull back them to set up their moves. they have to set up themselves. So you're putting one of the Elfin Dragons back. Something will, one of them will come in. Then you want to get a turn with that one, so you can then do the move on it. So you probably want to pull back the ones that have already done their move, while leaving the ones that have, come in, set themselves up, and yet they're yet to do a move. That's kind of how they play out. Now, I will say, I haven't actually played with them at all myself. I think I tested them a bit for in terms of figuring out the damage and that kind of stuff. So I tested a few of them, but I haven't actually used the setup because it became pretty evident. I could see it was awkward and it was not really working too well. I have never seen anyone else use them. They're just a bit difficult to use. The main reason I would say is because they set themselves up and not each other. They all are going and doing different archetypes, and there's no synergy between them, and they have to be together because the only way they can use the Elfin Dragon move is if an Elfin Dragon is next in line. So once their numbers dwindle, they become pretty much useless. If there's one by themselves, all they can do is just pull themselves back, re-enter, and then not use the Elfin Dragon move, then pull themselves back and re-enter. It's just really embarrassing. So, yeah, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So the gameplay is that. I did want to note, I think the Shadow one is quite interesting. So it was, I think, the last one to come out, or the second last one to come out, and I didn't realise this from, looking at them individually, but when I was trying to look at them as a whole for making this video, I realised the Shadow one heals them on entrance. So it's a 50% heal for the whole team, and bear in mind, they're all fairly tanky. They all have high defense, and they can put each other back the whole time. The Shadow one's probably pretty good at being pulled back and going in and out of the battle to keep healing them up. In PvP, it's not actually good enough because there are one-shots happening and all that kind of stuff. PvE, obviously you do get one-shot by attacks too, but if you are able to maintain some kind of control, sometimes you just get it by random attacks, and then you can just keep healing that up. So I think that's probably quite key to the strategy, and one of the ways how they actually kind of synergize together is the shadow healing. But I think ultimately there's a couple of them which are good, and you probably want to build around those two and then not actually go with the full Elfin Dragon setup, because a couple of these are really bad. So I would say there's one particular one, which is the fire one, that's probably the only one worth using, and you want to just build around the fire one and then not bother about anything else. It's a shame, but I think ultimately they're not strong enough, and they don't synergize together at all, so it just doesn't really work well enough. I think if they'd focused on, say, 3 archetypes and then had 2 Elfin Dragons for each one of those, then there could be some nice crossover, and maybe they wouldn't be, 2 on one archetype, 2 on another one, 2 on another one. There could be some kind of branching stuff where they could help each other out, and then you can get some kind of combination out of them which then can do something, and maybe, different combinations could feel different in terms of what they're doing. Or you just use all of them and then, you figure out the synergy when you're playing with it. That would have made them a lot better, but as we have it now, they're just all over the place. So the key players from this cycle, I said already, the fire one is really good for the main reason that it's 70-second double sweeping, and it's the easiest to support because it's poison. So I said how they enter and they set themselves up. Well, the fire one just needs enemies poisoned, and we've got loads of poison monsters in the game, so it's very easy to just have enemies poisoned, and then you can just repeatedly use the 70-second double sweeping, and it's effectively piercing because it's poison. So that is the main one to build around. It's very good if you can set it up. That's the one I have tested, not in PvP, but I tested it in PvE, just in some random battle, whatever. I made some kind of poison setup with this, and a couple of other Elfin Dragons behind, and kind of a tanky setup. I can't remember exactly, but something along those lines. And then it was able to kill through an enemy team really well, when it got control. But that is PvE, and PvP, it's very difficult to make that kind of setup because someone can just pick it apart way too easily. The other one I mentioned already, Shadow, for the healing entrance, I think that's actually pretty key. I think if we'd had more of that in the overall setup, it would have been pretty cool. There would have been some some nice stuff, because it supports all of them. Like, that's just, it feels nice. That's kind of what you want from a cycle. And then lastly, I think the Storm one may be a key player. Like I said, I haven't actually tried these, but the Storm one does have 50 seconds sweeping, so it's the fastest sweeping one. And it's also the highest speed, so it's pretty easy to come in, grab a kill, and then quickly send it back. When it next comes in, it gets a turn quickly, can kill something. So I think the Storm one may be. However, I'm slightly more sceptical of it, as I'll say when we get to talk about it individually. Let's take a look at them individually then. So the Earth one is first. So this one, like I said already, it makes a rock at the back, it can catapult. This one was the most exciting on paper because it's got Blood Fury. So unlike all the other ones which have to like pull themselves back to keep setting themselves up, this one only needs one kill and then it can Blood Fury. It also has Hardened Carapace, so it's especially tanky. However, Elfin Dragon Catapult is not quite strong enough. It just doesn't kill legendaries, and definitely not mythics. So it's unfortunate because it could have been a lot better. Also, maybe in some kind of throw team, you could make a load of rocks and then it could like repeatedly catapult. But it just doesn't, they're not strong enough to be able to do that. That you don't want to use any of the other ones in throw teams. And like I said, it doesn't do enough damage. And then Blood Fury, you kind of need 2 kills on that as well before it does good damage. So it's just not quite strong enough, which I think is really unfortunate. We see this on, a fair percentage of the super epics in the game, that they're just like, they're kind of good, but they're not quite strong enough to actually play against legendaries and mythics. So for a newer player, like maybe they can do something with them, but beyond that, they're just basically unusable. So yeah, that's what there is about this one. Looks really cool on paper, but just doesn't do the job. If this was like a legendary or something, and the setup was good, this would be a really strong monster. Like I think it would actually work out really well. It's just it's got the unfortunate, it's a super epic, and it's unfortunately not very good. So the fire one is pretty exciting. So like I said, I mentioned this already. The double Poison Eater, 70 seconds, very strong. If you can set this up, it's very good for that. It's also full defense, but it does high damage with the double Poison Eater because it's got Fighting Spirit. So that is a slight condition. Like, it needs to be on high HP. With Elfin Dragons, you've got the healing entrance that you can maybe do. You have to build around it, basically to make it work properly. But if you can get the 70 seconds, you can kill through the enemy team very quickly. So bear in mind, +9, that's 59 seconds. You can add Accelerate, and then it's like 40, like low 40s, I think. I can't remember the exact seconds, but anyway, it's exceptionally fast to just kill through the enemy team repeatedly. That just decimates the enemy team. So if you can get that going, it's awesome. Otherwise, it's not that amazing. It doesn't get supported by any of the other Elfin Dragons. In fact, it goes against the Shadow one, because the Shadow one wants to be stealthed, and this has a chance to poison teammates when it enters, so it can remove stealth from the Shadow one. It can also... there's a sleep one, and then the poison can wake up the sleep one. So, how are they meant to be used together? And yet, the Elfin Dragon moves require them to be used together. It's a shame. Stealth Bane's obviously also a really good move, and Detox Strike gets set up by the entrance as well. So, really nice damaging moves here. It's just not supported at all by the other Elfin Dragons, and, you have to build around it pretty carefully to make it work. So the Holy One, this is the other one that I quite liked when I looked at. So this has a nice fail case of Switch Friend. So, like I said, if the Elfin Dragons kind of fall apart, some of them die off, it becomes really weak and it doesn't work. So having a Switch Friend on a monster, one of them is really good, because if it gets left until last, it can switch itself out. Or otherwise, it just gives you a bit more flexibility with that kind of thing. So Switch Friend is a nice thing to have on these kinds of monsters. And then what makes this really nice is the Elfin Dragon Overconfident Strike. This does actually do good damage. It does more damage than the Catapult move. I can't remember the exact amount of damage, but I think basically it one-shots legendaries, but not mythics. And I think it will do, it has a reasonable chance at, the lower HP mythics. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's something like that. And the key thing is that it can kill anything it likes. The Storm one, which we'll talk about in a second, it's got a 50-second move, but it will mark a particular enemy when it comes in, and it can only kill that one enemy. This can kill anything it likes, and I think that's also a key thing which sometimes doesn't get brought up enough on various monsters, like Ryan Dragon, for example, and people look at that and they're like, it's not a very good monster. I'm not going to say it's the most amazing thing ever, but it can always do one-shot damage, and it can always do it on whatever it likes. It's not like a monster with, I don't know, Time's Up, that Time's Up is a brilliant move, yeah, but if you have no chrono target, then you can't do it. And if there is a chrono target, you have to do one of the attacks on that, and then one on to be fair, anything else. But like if it was a single target move, like Protector Killers here, say, they can only hit protectors. You can't choose what you want to critical with it. So anyway, the overconfident strike here is very good. I think if this was better, if the whole setup was better, this would be a really nice piece that would just kind of, make it work nicely. It doesn't have any particular condition that it needs to be met, unlike, the other ones where, like, the sleep and the stealth and the fire kind of contradict each other and stuff. This one just needs to be on high HP. And it heals itself and shields itself when it enters, so it sets itself up beautifully. It also gets supported by the Shadow one, because that can heal. So yeah, if all the Elfin Dragons had been like this one, I think it would have worked nicely overall. So those were the kind of exciting ones, and now we get to the less exciting ones. So the Shadow one, the only thing I like about this is the healing entrance, healing the team. Other than that, the Elfin Dragon move is 100 seconds here, not 70. Maybe not so bad because you can pull it back with another monster. Maybe also because it can set itself up when it's in the battle with stealth. However, that is a 70-second move. Like most of the time, the stealth will be removed. Then it's just got a hit all move. Well, that's not particularly useful. And yeah, stealthy entrance, fine, but it's too low speed that it's not really going to set itself up. So like, this monster can't really do anything proper on the battlefield. All it can really do is the healing entrance. And I think that's, a fair thing, but it's not particularly good, especially because it gets counteracted by the fire one, and the fire one is the best one. So, it's not ideal. Moving on to the next one, the storm one. Mentioned this a bunch already. This one is nice because it's got high speed. Stun Flash, also fairly useful. Chrono Killer, though, too weak on this monster. And then we got the 50-second Elfin Dragon Corner Snipe. I thought maybe as part of like a mark setup, but it's just not good enough because it needs the other Elfin Dragons, and they all have that issue, that they need each other. And this one does have the Mark Protection, that's a very nice passive. That's another thing to note about them all, is like they all have to be used together. There's no stun protection, so you will get stunned out of the game very easily. Yeah, not a great setup, Elfin Dragons. So let's move on a bit faster now. So yeah, this one, basically, I've said what I wanted to say about it. And then the water one, this is like the worst one, mainly because it doesn't sleep an enemy when it enters, it sleeps anything. So it will sleep your team too, which is just really bad. Now I get why, is because with the 50-second move where you can pull them in and out, if this only slept the enemy team, it would be very abusable, and that's probably what they made originally, and then they tested it and found it was too powerful. That's my my theory, but may not be true. So yeah, that may be the case, that they just tested that and then found like, oh, it's too powerful. We need it to hit a random thing, because you can just sleep the enemy team way too easily by pulling in and out too quickly. Otherwise, it's got Purify All, Toxic Killer. Fine, they're not really going to do that much, and then it can kill the sleeping enemy. This one does have stun immunity, but like, yeah, it's unfortunate. They don't work well together. I think I've said enough about the Elfin Dragons. I feel bad to say it because, I like these cool cycles, and I think the artwork is really awesome. I think the Elfin Dragons look cool. They needed to be designed differently, so they worked better together, and you could actually use them in a team. The other cycle we got this year are the Gummy Dragons. So this is a little bit better than the Elfin Dragons. They're not amazing. They're not strong enough to be usable in PvP. However, in PvE, they're pretty interesting, and I can see why some people would be a fan of them. And if I was a newer player, and I got these, I would have a lot of fun with them. They're definitely quite cool. They're just not that amazing. They play with the idea of stats buffs, which is something which has been generally used a lot more in the game in the last couple of years. And these just go overkill with stat buffs. So it's quite fun in that way if you like the stat buffs going on. So yeah, let's talk about the move. Oh yeah, also one thing to say, the Storm one technically came out the previous year, became a bit confusing in the setup this year because I have it in the Storm video, but then it didn't actually come out this year, but I'm not going to talk about it in the Storm video, I haven't got it in the numbers. I hope that's not too confusing for people. Basically, I thought it would make a lot more sense to talk about with the other monsters this year, even though it came out last year. So, the moveset. The moveset is very, very similar across the Gummy Dragons. They all have 30% speed, exactly 30% speed, which is interesting actually because you can then adjust the entrance speed bonus to choose what order they get turns, which is actually very useful for their setup. So they're all standard defense, they're all stun immune, and then they all get plus 200% attack and defense when there's a fellow Gummy Dragon on the battlefield. So if you start, just your front line is all 4 Gummy Dragons, they're all going to be triple stats, which means that they have the defense cap, so everything's going to be doing minimum damage to them, and obviously the attacks they do are very, very strong. So they will have we can see here, they all have Counter-Strike. So this Counter-Strike move just one-shots everything. Everything at criticals if their stats buffed. Otherwise, it's weak. It doesn't do enough damage. And then they all have Summon Prototype, which summons this little vanilla whelp, the white holy monster on the right-hand side, which is an epic that we'll talk about when we get to it. I can't remember if I put it first or afterwards, but anyway, we'll talk about it in a second. And then they have 2 damaging moves, one which requires 1 vanilla whelp on the battlefield, and one which requires 2 on the battlefield. So they all have these exact, 4 style of moves: Counter-Strike, summoning the vanilla whelp, and then a move which requires 1, a move which requires 2. And bear in mind also, they only get the stats buff if there's another Gummy Dragon on the battlefield. So if you had, say, all 4 there in the front line, and then you made 3 vanilla whelps, you did summon Prototype the first 3, the 4th one, it could use any move it likes, but it won't have the stats boost anymore, because there's not another Gummy Dragon on the battlefield. The vanilla whelps do not count. So in terms of gameplay, they're very, very challenging to play well. You have to really balance how many vanilla whelps you have on the battlefield and think ahead of which ones do you want to attack with and which ones do you need to summon Prototype with to turn into a vanilla whelp. Oh, I didn't actually say summon Prototype pulls itself back. It's like a step back move on itself to create the vanilla whelp. So that one then isn't attacking, but it sets up the moves on the other ones. So you have to very carefully decide ahead of time what you're doing with them, and what the enemy team is going to be killing off, to then figure out how do I want to do this, to set up the right moves. And also you've got the elements to consider, because they all have Counter-Strike, so across them they cover 4 of the elements with their Counter-Strikes, and that's a move that's always available there. You don't have to have any vanilla whelps around, so you have to really figure this out while you're playing it, and it gets quite complicated. Also, yes, the second point I made here on the gameplay about the stats boost, you can't just be thinking about, which moves do I want. I need to set up the moves with the vanilla whelps. Also, if you pull too many vanilla whelps up, you make too many vanilla whelps, then the Gummy Dragons don't have the stats boost, so they may not then do the damage that you want them to do. So there's a lot of things to consider with the gameplay. Ultimately, that's why they're too clunky for PvP, because you don't have that freedom to just make all those decisions in PvP. But in PvE, you can. Also, if you have a particular preference on which one you want to be attacking with and which one you want to turn into a vanilla whelp, that's where adjusting the speed comes into play, because you can then make the ones that you want to turn into vanilla whelps slightly higher speed, and the ones that you want to attack slightly lower speed, and then you can line it up well. So yeah, they're really interesting, very cool, but very challenging. I think when I said about the Pyramid Golems, that I used them in the past, and I said they're very hard to play. Now they are strong enough to use in PvP, however, it's incredibly challenging to use them well in PvP, because you have to think ahead about which one you want to load, and it also telegraphs to your opponent exactly what you're going to be doing, because you're showing them, I'm going to attack with this one because I'm loading this one, and then sometimes you have to load something just so that they will attack and kill that one, because you actually want to attack with a different one, but you need to load that one afterwards, and that kind of stuff. It gets very complicated. Now those can just about work in PvP. The Gummy Dragons, they can't. Yeah, even so, they're quite challenging in PvE to play. So the key players from these four, the fire one I like the most. It's got the chrono and piercing sweeping. I put plus piercing sweeping. I can't remember exactly why. Because of the two different moves. So it kills chrono monsters and it's got piercing sweeping. Otherwise, the chrono monsters are just kind of the most common in terms of these type killer things. I didn't actually say the 1+ vanilla whelp move, where you have to have one vanilla whelp. That is a type killer move, and then the other one is a different kind of thing. Generally speaking, but we'll see the monsters in a second. And then the other one I like is the water one, because that one can actually more easily just keep killing with its moves. The other ones have certain conditions to be able to kill with their moves, whereas the water one is kind of, it doesn't have that so much. But like I said, I like the fire one a bit more, but the earth and the storm are the less good of the two. First we'll look at the vanilla whelp. So this is the one that's summoned by all their moves. They sort of step back and create this. It also gets a defense buff, and an attack buff, but basically it's a defense buff from having a Gummy Dragon on the battlefield, which is important because this being a protector, when it has that defense buff, it is really tanky, like way more tanky than you'd think an epic would be. Being rounded stats with the defense buff means it's higher than what you'd normally have from full defense, and then because it's got exceptionally low speed, it's got the highest HP that an epic could have. So yeah, it's surprisingly tanky, and then it's got support stuff, so it can purify, it can heal, it can shield. Bear in mind, the Gummy Dragons all have this massive, stats buff, so they have really high defense, so having a heal all is key. So when I played these in PvE, I found that, yeah, they tank like crazy. They tank like Mythics, basically, or more. And so having heal all for them that's just like on tap from these vanilla whelps they make, it is brilliant. It really makes them work a lot better. Shield Ally also very useful for helping one get a turn that's about to get a turn, or keeping a vanilla whelp alive. You can shield themselves, or like shield other vanilla whelps and stuff to keep them around, so then you can use the Gummy Dragon moves. So yeah, that's the vanilla whelp. I really like the design of the vanilla whelp in conjunction with the Gummy Dragons. I think it's very good. They're just not quite strong enough overall. I think if we had a Holy and Shadow Gummy Dragon, probably they would function a lot better and maybe even be usable in PvP. I don't know. We'd have to see, but it would be closer to it. So the Earth one, the Gummy Dragon move here, the first one is Night Watch. It just doesn't have a huge number of targets. Like, sleep monsters are around, but they're not always around. It's good to have a Gummy Dragon with it on, so that when it comes up, you can use this to kill the sleep enemies, as well as something else. But otherwise, you can put it back. Night Watch is also a faster move, only 70 seconds, but hits 2. That's great. And then it's got the Power Slash. Now, the Power Slash isn't quite strong enough to kill what you would like it to kill, if I remember correctly. It's good, but not exceptional. Yeah. So this one's fine. It's not as good as the fire and the water, basically, but it's it fits the bill. Then we've got the fire one. So the fire one I think is a bit better. Well, I said it's the best, basically, I think. That's because we've got times up, chrono monsters come up more, and then we've got the double piercing blow, which I can't remember the damage on it again. It's been a while since I played these, but basically there are no conditions on that. You just need the 2 vanilla whelps, and then you can piercing kill 2 enemies. There's a lot of recoil from it, so it will kind of kill off Cranberry. But you can use the heal all from the vanilla whelps to recover that HP. So it kind of works out. So when I used them, I found that this one was kind of like one that I used a lot for damage dealing. 160 seconds for the double piercing blows was not horrendous. It does work out quite well. So this one, the storm one that we got, quite a while ago now. So this, unfortunately, I think it's kind of the worst with the way it lines up. And on paper, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, you know, this is excellent. This would be a great one for the setup. And I didn't really think about it, how it would work in practice. In practice, these moves are just like the wrong moves to have on a Gummy Dragon. So the key thing here is that to set up the Gummy Dragon moves, you have to create a vanilla whelp. You know, one vanilla whelp or two vanilla whelps. So you need to pull them back. And if you pull, say, this back, when it re-enters, well then the double retribution isn't charged. You need enemies to have kills or teammates to die whilst on the battlefield. However, you also need vanilla whelps on the battlefield, and those are the protectors which will die first. So for you to have the dual Slayer Bane charged, you need to have 2 vanilla whelps on the battlefield and one of the enemies with a kill. Now, when an enemy gets a kill, they probably killed a vanilla whelp. And what's the chance that you have 2 vanilla whelps on the battlefield at that point? Basically nothing. And like to have one, yeah, okay, you can double retribution. But again there, you need to have had 2 vanilla whelps on the battlefield while this is on the battlefield, then wait until one of them dies, and then you can do double retribution once, and then like you've got to like make more vanilla whelps and stuff. It's like to actually set up these moves is really, really awkward. I just found when using it, like, it came up sometimes, but like it was not reliable at all. This one was just really awkward. So I think of the 4, I don't like the design of this one. The moves look like really good generic moves. And, you know, 100-second dual Slayer Bane with the stats boost, that will just annihilate enemies, except that they don't really get kills unless the condition to use the move is not met. So yeah, anyway, that's this one. I won't rant anymore. But yeah, that one I don't like too much. The water one, so this has Defang. Poison, again, kind of comes up a bit more than, I would say, than Sleep, but less than Chrono. And then we've got the more generic moves. So this is the kind of reason why I like this one, is you've got the generic double fast strike. So this is just like, if you can meet the condition of having 2 vanilla whelps on the battlefield, well then you can kind of kill enemies. You know, you can kill them very well with a double fast strike. It's a very slow move, but there's no other condition to be met. And as long as you've got another Gummy Dragon there, so it's, you know, Blueberry, one other Gummy Dragon and 2 vanilla whelps, then you can just, you know, use the move and kill enemies very easily. So yeah, those are the Gummy Dragons. Very cool design, very interesting. They're better than some other Super Epic cycles, but not quite good enough to be used in PvP because they're a bit too clunky, and like the requirements of using their moves just a bit too much. Now it's time to talk about Fire itself. We've covered those 2 cycles that came out this year. So the Fire, well, we got very few Fire monsters this year. Previously, the last couple of years, we got a huge amount of Fire support, and I think it was my first video. I've done this 4 years now, and so that first series, I talked about Fire, and I was like, you know, there's not much synergy between it. It's not that amazing. Like, there are a few people who like it, but, you know, it's more of like kind of like, you know, that hipster kind of element. And then over the years, I've slowly gone like, oh, well, you know, more people are playing it, like it's a bit stronger and stuff. And then basically it became super popular. So throughout 2021, it was incredibly popular, used loads. And then for some reason at the end of the year as well, they gave like the biggest support, most powerful monster for it, Magmagund, which had only just come out. So in the video, I was raving about how much I loved it, but I didn't oversell quite just how powerful it was. But obviously there was a little bit in the back of my mind that was like, I can tell this is really powerful, and that's why I love it. And then, yeah, it went on to be so powerful that basically this year, what's happened is they've generally been not supporting Fire, they've been nerfing it, and they've been giving counters to it. Because Link Fire has just been like everywhere in PvP, it's been way too popular, people have been asking for it to be nerfed for ages now. So they actually did that over the course of this year, which is why when we look at this, there's only 1 Mythic. There are no Legendaries, only 1 Mythic. Now, to be fair, the previous year they gave, I think Fire had like the most monsters. It was Fire or Shadow. They basically got loads of support. So we were kind of due a year of not much support. But we also got counters to Fire, as we'll see on some of these monsters in these videos. So yeah, basically That's the story of fire this year. And the one mythic that we got though is good. So yeah, we'll have a look at that in a few minutes. So fire in general, it is a fast and high attack element. It is the most aggressive element, which is definitely something I've said in the past. And I think if you've been playing the game for the last couple of years, you'll know that in PvP, that's one of the reasons why it was so good and why it was so hated. Is it was just so oppressive when it got going. Like it just like would sweep through a team without you being able to do much at all. It's just a very aggressive element in general. There are no protectors. That's kind of like the thing about it. There's some crossover between the elements of like their themes and that kind of stuff, but there are a few things which like a certain element does not have or has loads of. Like for example, fire does not have protectors. Holy does not really have any poison, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's how fire is. It's also got some element accelerating, that kind of stuff, so they can like attack quickly. Yeah, that's the style. So otherwise, it's got a bunch of dragons, rocks, and some demons. Those are the kind of types that we see in fire. So the first theme to talk about in fire is the poison theme. This is probably the most well-known theme. Fire does poison very well. It's got a bunch of mass poison things there that will like, poison the whole battlefield on entrance or with a move. And then poison sweeping, a lot of poison sweeping. Almost all are like double sweeping as well, like killing 2 enemies. You've got also triple sweeping, and some of it being quite fast. Yeah, that's what fire does. That is pretty oppressive when it gets going. And some of this stuff, well, we covered it at the beginning of the Earth video, how poison got some nerfs, and Link double poison neuter as well, Link single poison neuter as well, to try and make this less oppressive. So yeah, anyway, that's poison. Very cool stuff that fire does with that. Then we've got the Link fire team. So this is something that I put together kind of a couple of years ago. I realised that actually fire has the most Link stuff of all the elements. It really cares about playing Link. All the best fire monsters are Link monsters, pretty much, which really pushes people into Link fire. And that's why I was kind of saying, actually, the other elements do Link very well, and Link fire isn't actually that amazing. However, it is being very popular. So I was trying to say, oh yeah, that's right, sorry. I was trying to say that it was popular mainly because the best fire monsters pushed you into using Link, which then encouraged you to get the other, powerful Link fire monsters, and then everyone created that one same setup, rather than people getting like a bunch of different monsters and then putting it together and then, finding, oh, I've got enough monsters I can make a strong Link Storm team, that kind of thing. So I do think that was an element of it, but also Link fire is just very strong. So you've got a few strong sweepers there that are not actually Link, and then on the right hand side we have a bunch of different Link fire sweepers that do it in different ways. A bunch of poison, but there's some other ones too there. Moving into the monsters, we'll start off with the super epics. So first we have Blaze Tail. Now this is pretty cool. I haven't seen it get used like at all. I would like to see it starting to get used because I think it's actually pretty good. But it takes a lot to encourage people to use super epics. And this one has Stun Revenge, which some people really do not like Stun Revenge. I would say that, interestingly, Stun has changed quite a bit in the meta in the last few months because there's a lot stronger counters to it. It's also been nerfed a little bit. So I've actually noticed a lot less stun being used, and also, in some cases, less stun protection being used. So it may become a bit more balanced and well-rounded, where you can then use Stun Revenge monsters, and there's less of a risk. That's personally what I found with using Griff King. Griff King I actually really quite like as stun protection, as well as just being a cool support monster. Since they added stun converter to that, it's a lot better, and the stun revenge that it's got is not a risk so much. So anyway, this monster has quite a lot to offer. It's the right kind of speed that you want for Retribution, where it's not too slow but also not too fast, that usually by the time it gets a turn something would have died. Now I'm mainly talking outside of the front line, because this monster's probably, it's not really a frontline monster. So yeah, usually when it comes in, gets a turn, it should have Retribution charged, which, because of its high attack, like that is a very strong move. Like, you're going to get a kill with that Retribution, or you should get a kill with that Retribution, and it's only 100 seconds. if they kill another one of your monsters 100 seconds, like you then can Retribution again. For a super epic, you know, that is very solid. It's just one of those things that maybe on paper doesn't look amazing, but in practice can work out really nicely. Pesticide, hitting bugs. Bug Union was one of the Union types that got support this year, with everyone getting Mantis Samurai. There's a lot of bugs being used right now, even though there aren't that many in the game. So anyway, that's definitely a nice move to have. So it's got these 2 100-second moves that it can use to charge a blood move, and the blood move itself only needs 1 kill because it's got high attack. This kills really easily, and it's only 80 seconds. So it's got the solo requirement, but if you're not using other fire monsters, this one is pretty damn cool, I think. I think it's just a good sweeper. The Lava Entrance Plus as well. I don't know if that kills little rockoids that have been made, like tokens. There's actually an interesting point that I didn't think about before, and I'm just saying it now. But maybe this is like anti-token disruption. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, Lava Entrance Plus, basically it's like a slightly stronger Lava Entrance. So it counters sleep, stealth, shields, whole crack, you know, that kind of stuff. It can maybe kill off a teammate or kill off an enemy that's on low HP to then charge the solo Blood Crave or the Retribution for when it gets a turn. So I think this is just a solid sweeper. There's nothing really that goes to waste on the moveset. Having a couple of ways to charge a blood move, a fast blood move, knockback if you need it. You know, having knockback sometimes it's a good move to have. It has got low defense, and it may bite you with the Stun Revenge, but to be honest, for a super epic, I think this offers a lot for 10 cost. I think it's a good monster, should see more play. I hope I've convinced some people who've watched this video to try it out, because I haven't tried it out myself, but it definitely looks decent. The one last thing I want to say is the artwork I think is very cool. So this is kind of like a play on Wavetail. Very different moveset though. It's not like a shiny version of Wavetail at all. But the Wavetail has like the classic, I don't know what it's called, but it's like some kind of Japanese art that has like the crashing wave thing, and it's one of those like classic bits of artwork that gets used on everything. And so they've got that on the peacock's tail feathers. And here we've got a volcano erupting, which is also really cool artwork, I think. Looks very nice on that. So yeah, really appreciate the artwork, and quite cool that they've got those 2 monsters, kind of like how they have Battlegoge and Asterios. Very similar. They're not shiny monsters. It's not a shiny version of it. They're just 2 monsters in different elements that have a similar kind of artwork, and in that case they have a similar theme. But yeah, anyway, cool stuff. I really appreciate that. Next we've got Dragekon, and actually talking about artwork, I really like the artwork of this. I think it's we don't have many geckos in the game. I'm not sure which other monsters. There's probably some like low star monsters that geckos. But yeah, geckos, cool stuff to make monsters with. And this one is like a dragon gecko, except it is a reptile, which is good because we need more reptiles in the game. So this is also kind of solo. You can see they really didn't want to support fire this year. In previous years, they might have made this a Link monster, you know, with a Link Double Poison Eater and the Link Mega Bomb or something, but they made it solo. This one is also a decent one. So even though it's got minimum defense, it's got hardened carapace, so it's actually tanky, but also has the high attack, which means that even though it's a super epic, it can do high damage. So that's great. You know, that's the kind of thing that makes a super epic very viable, is tanking a bit better than super epics do and doing enough damage to kill things. High speed with Double Poison Eater is also very interesting. We have not really seen that in the game. They, over the last 2 or 3 years, they pulled away all the like really high speed poison support stuff. You know, originally Toxic Entrance could work right at the start of a battle, so then you could like, you know, if this monster existed, which actually we had Scorpio Guys when that came out, that was completely broken, that was 80% speed as well. You could bring in the Toxic Entrance, poison the whole battlefield, and then you could double Poison Eater straight away from this. You know, with Scorpio Geist, it was like a stun converter, poison massacre that you could do, just get extra turns and kill through an enemy team. That was completely broken and got nerfed. But here, this is still pretty cool. You can't do the setup right at the start of the battle, really. Maybe at some point we'll get set up for that, but just generally coming in quite quickly, being tanky, and then being able to kill 2 things, I think is really good. Otherwise, the moveset is really, really cool. So I don't think it's the most amazing, impressive monster. I think it's got the makings of a good monster, and it's just generally, generally a solid, good monster that can definitely see play. But if I was new to the game, like if I'd got this monster when I started the game, like 6.5 years ago, or however long it was now, yeah, about 6.5 years ago, I would have loved this. This would have been my favourite monster, because I think it's really cool with the other stuff on it. So, just talk about the boring stuff first. Double Poison Eater for damage, got Kinslayer for damage too. That's fine. You can basically use it in some kind of poison team. It will sometimes meet fire enemies, we're countering fire here, and it can kill with things with Double Poison Eater. That's all good. But then also you've got this big payoff for passing time, where you either do Drain Survivor or solo Mega Bomb. So even if you do have some fire monsters enter, say you're planning to have it solo, but you have fire further back in the team, or they make bronze shells in your team, that kind of thing, then you can't use the solo Mega Bomb. You still get a payoff with the Drain Survivor, and you have the choice. Maybe there's stealth in your team and you don't want a Mega Bomb, then you can Drain Survivor still. So yeah, it's like also a great payoff for the fact that its attack move, its main attack move with Double Poison Eater, is slow, so you don't really want to use that repeatedly. But if you use it a couple of times and it's still stuck around in the battlefield or whatever, it can then use these other really powerful moves. So I think it's very cool with that. And obviously we haven't mentioned at all the poison skin that can set up the poison. Probably more of a PvE thing, because PvP players will actually, they'll know that, and they'll be careful about hitting it and setting up your poison monsters. But yeah, cool stuff. I think this is a really nice monster. One of my favourite designed super epics from this year. And I have not seen anyone use it. I don't have it. I didn't hatch it because it came out in an egg, so you had to specifically hatch for it. But when I do hatch it, I will definitely try it out because I think it's very cool and it should be fun to use. Those were the two most exciting super epics. From here on, they're less interesting. Elfin Dragon Rod, we've already talked about. I'm not going to talk about it here. Although I realised I forgot to mention their names. Rod, Ivit. I think those are Norse for the colours, or some kind of language from that region of the world. Next is the Gummy Dragon Cranberry, which we've already discussed too, so we'll just move straight on from that. So now we get to the fifth one, which is Megaceratops. This is a shiny version of one of the original super epics in the game. They are basically Accelerate Team with Sleep All, and then some damage moves. They're pretty boring. I don't think people have ever really used them in any sense. I think at the very start of the game, sometimes it would be worth using them and just basically RNGing it. So you use one and you plan to just repeat the battle and try to get a lucky Sleep All. But that was the only time you ever used them. So they've changed it from being that sleep stuff to a poison monster. This, again, probably would have been a Link monster, had this been a different year, but they didn't make it that. Although it is fire poison, so, people were scared when this came out. They're like, no, not more fire support, it's even a stun converter. But yeah, it's not that great. The issue here is it's low attack, so the Poison Chomp does good damage, but not exceptional. Poison Typhoon is a bit slow. The monster itself is not particularly fast, so it's not like it's set up for your poison monsters with that Poison Typhoon. And then Slash All, it's a piercing attack, but it's not very strong. So if you get lucky and there's stun around and you get extra turns, it can work fine. But it's one of those super epics that's just kind of at the beginning of the game you can use this, but you're not really going to use this anywhere else. This is not strong enough for PvE because it doesn't do high enough damage, and PvP there are much stronger monsters to be using. So yeah, it's one for newer players, and it's nice that they went back to old monster, turned it from sleep into poison. But yeah, that was it. Actually, I said that there's only two exciting. There is this one. This is a good super epic again. So this is very specifically a Death Revenge counter. It's got Hold Ground and Payback Killer, and good speed. So Death Revenge has kind of become a bit more common in the last couple of years, because steadily over time we've got more and more Death Revenge monsters, and some of them are pretty viable with the rest of the moveset they have, that like, you know, they're an alright monster, plus then have Death Revenge. In the past, some of them were a bit dodgy, you know, they had Death Revenge, but like the moveset wasn't as strong as other monsters. But now we've got enough that, you know, some of them stand out and some of them are good, and so you can build a Death Revenge team and it can be strong, or otherwise just have quite a lot of Death Revenge in your team. So Payback Killer is a newer move that they've been putting on some monsters, and it's quite important in some cases. So this is a specific counter for Death Revenge. I haven't really seen anyone use this in PvP, but, you know, if Death Revenge is in the meta, it is maybe possible to use, and then plan to like have something to kill it off if it's not, you know, if you don't come across Death Revenge. But if you do come across Death Revenge, you can Payback Killer. You then got Blood Crave. The Blood Crave isn't the strongest because it's, you know, got lowish attack, but it does the job. It's definitely good for that. And in PvE, you know, you can use it for a specific battle where there's Death Revenge monsters, and it's gonna do very well there. So nice monster to exist in the game. Definitely one people can use, but not necessarily exceptional. I've got an S in PvP. I may bring it down over time. I'm not entirely certain, because you can go down the route of like combo stuff with shock and electrocute. I was going to say, yeah, electrocute. Anyway, I've got language problems, so sometimes I'll read something and I'm like, that is not a word. Anyway, so that's this monster. Maybe I'll bring it down over time, but it's pretty good and does the job of countering Death Revenge. So that was the super epics. Now we've just got this one mythic, and that will be, you know, the last monster we're talking about here. So this mythic is actually really, really strong. So when it came out, it wasn't very good. I think I might have moaned about it when it came out, because there are like some annoying problems with it, and then they just buffed it way more than I thought they would, which I swear seems to happen sometimes when I moan about something and I'm like, oh, this isn't very good, and then they make it really good, like stronger than I want it to be. So yeah, we didn't get fire support, but we did happen to get a really good mythic. So this monster is a bit complicated to understand, and I've seen some people complain about something, so I want to address that first. They complain that Stunning Fulu doesn't work properly on the monster because it stuns for half the seconds that it says it does, and that stupid design. Why would you make something stun when it also halves its stun? This is a bit... I don't want to call the people silly for complaining about this, but when this monster came out, it stunned for 50 seconds. Or something like that, and they changed it to be 200 seconds. So it full on, like, it is a very good stun move. It just so happens to say double the amount that it actually does, because Orochi has stun by sector. Like, basically, they intend for it to stun 100 seconds, so the move stuns 200 seconds, and then that becomes halved. So the other issue that I have with this is the death entrance is random, and I would say overall it's kind of a negative as a passive. Now, it can work quite well if you build around it in a particular way, and that is to put a monster behind that has like a good entrance or something useful that you want to have on the battlefield. Best example of this is to have Death Gazer behind. So if you have Death Gazer behind Orochi, then it means that when she enters, if she kills an enemy, great, you know, she killed an enemy for free. If she kills one of your team, well then Death Gazer comes in, Orochi and maybe the other monsters in your team instantly get a turn, and the opponent didn't even see the Death Gazer coming because it was 2 monsters back. So that's one example. There's a few other monsters you can use with Orochi that can work really nicely, where you basically give them a instant entrance when Orochi enters. You kind of have to build around that if you don't want to get annoyed by the death entrance. But key thing is it gives her 1 kill, which is pretty nice. So then when she gets a turn, which is a little bit slow to get a turn, but she's got high defense and only stun and killer weakness, then she can basically stun lock the enemy team. Yeah, she's pretty crazy like that with the Stunning Fulu when they buffed that. So originally it was 50 seconds, and I think it was just like a little kind of like, oh yeah, it will stun them by, because it's halved. Only 25 seconds, just like a little pushback, and it makes her weak to stun killer, which they try and do that on some of the monsters where they put something on it. It's like, it doesn't really need to have the archetype on there, but it's on there just to give it a killer weakness, so that there's enough monsters out there with killer weaknesses for you to use the killer moves, and makes the whole thing stay balanced, because otherwise people would just be like, well, what's the point in using counter shot monsters, because I never meet stun monsters, that kind of thing. So anyway, so it used to just stun by a bit, but now it stuns by basically 100 seconds, and it's a 68-second move. So she can use that, kill an enemy of your choice, any enemy, instantly kills them, and then stuns the others for 100 seconds. That's ridiculous control, absolutely ridiculous, because especially if you imagine the case of they have a stun absorber, or they have a stun counter monster, it doesn't matter for Orochi, because you just go, oh, that's your stun protection? Okay, that dies, and the rest get stunned. Yeah, it's crazy. She can then do that a second time. It does cost 50% of her health, and it's of her max HP, so if she does it twice in a row, she does kill herself off. However, in that time, she's entered, she's got a kill, hopefully that was an enemy, and then she gets 2 kills from the stunning Fulu twice, so she has got 2 kills while on the battlefield, plus also, for 200 seconds, meant that none of the enemies are playing, if they're stunnable. Yeah, that's crazy stun lock potential. Also, you can choose to not do that. You can do the stunning Fulu, then meditation, then stunning Fulu again, and then maybe meditation again, and keep her alive while she's doing it. There's options for that. You also only need 1 kill to do the Bloodthirst, because she's already got the kill from the death entrance. So doing stunning Fulu once, then you can do the Bloodthirst. Yeah, very aggressive monster, very controlling. Explosion Fulu, it's a bit more niche, but it does come up that might be useful. And then Swift Revival, it's an insane secret skill to add. So originally when I was looking at Orochi, before she got buffed, I was like, she's a bit underpowered, she's not that great, but she's stun protection, and then the thing that kind of brings her power level up is the Swift Revival. And so I found it difficult to place her in the tier list, because I was like, she's not that great, but she has Swift Revival, which is a really good move, only 50 seconds to get a full HP monster into your team. That seems really good. However, then they buffed her moveset, so now she's got a really good moveset, plus also can just give you an extra monster on your team. If Orochi gets turns, you are probably going to be winning that battle. That's pretty much how I feel about Orochi. I've got her in S-, and when I say a statement like that, it probably sounds like she should be S or S+, but I'm not 100% convinced by her, because if they got stun protection where you can't stun, then she can't, do the whole stun locking thing, and also the death entrance can backfire, and yeah, so it's not necessarily the most exceptional thing. She's quite low speed, which she has to be, to be honest. If she was high speed, it would definitely she would be S+. But yeah, the Swift Revival is a very, very good move, and considering that you can kill an enemy of your choice, stun them, and then maybe even revive the thing that you killed, that can work out really nicely. So yeah, very, very powerful mythic. If you didn't get her because you originally looked at her when she came out and you were like, oh, she's not that great. Since her buff, she's become very, very strong. I've seen a couple of people use her since, and she's a high priority must kill target, because she will take control of the battle if she can get some turns. So that's it for these monsters. Now we can just talk about kind of generally what we had overall. I think I talked more on the monsters that were good, so we've pretty much covered things here. And this video is probably going quite long, so I won't be too long on this. As we said with the highlights, Orochi, stun lock, stun protection, or stun control, stun protection. Very, very good at that. I didn't really mention the stun protection side of it, but stun bisector is very, very good. It protects your team a lot better than you'd think. I know that some people have been down on stun bisector. If you actually use it, I think it works really nicely. When your team's only getting stunned by 40 seconds from a stunning entrance or stun revenge, or 50 seconds from a shocking entrance, that's not too bad. It gives them some breathing room, but it doesn't impact the battle in nearly the same way. So that stun protection on a monster that's high defense, decent, very decent. And then, like I said, she can control the battlefield very, very well. We've got a Death Revenge counter in the shiny Saber Dragon, and then we've got a couple of super epics that I think are underplayed right now, and I would like to see people play them more. I think they're both good. both very viable in PvP. You just need to use them in the right kind of team. Although actually, to be honest, Blazetail is quite generic. It's just basically don't use fire monsters, and then the other one requires poison and some like time passing stuff, maybe give turn, bit of support for it. But yeah, that's it for the highlights, because there weren't many monsters. I actually was able to talk about all the ones that were any decent. The strength of them, we got a crazy mythic, really strong mythic, complete blank, legendaries, and then the super epics. We got a couple of good ones, and of the Elfin Dragons, we did get the best Elfin Dragon in fire. So there's some super epics there which are quite interesting. They gave the power in super epics this year rather than legendaries and mythics, really. But yeah, the one mythic we got was very good. So what we got was pretty decent. We just didn't get much stuff in fire this year, and we got counters to fire in some of the other elements. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I hope you found it interesting hearing about the Elfin Dragons and Gummy Dragons, my take on those. I am pushing a little bit for a bit of a redesign to Elfin Dragons. I hope they do something with them at some point. I hope also we see a Holy and Shadow of the Gummy Dragons, because I think that will make them better and more usable. But yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you in the next one soon.